Father, his predecessor, and Tillman. And then, in fact, Tillman's nephew was here this morning, which was really a treat. St. Augustine's has really touched my life in so many ways. It was right after, pretty close to the end of Vatican II. The community was really willing, I think, to do a lot of crazy things that we did when I came here. Dan had begun, I think, to move the altar away from the back wall, which the brothers had built, and we wanted it to be such that you could walk around it, and so we disassembled it, and I designed the altar that you have today, and Father Yost, Herbie Yost built it. And then we moved the altar down from the sanctuary and put the baptismal font up there and so on. And then predecessors moved it to the side, which I think is wonderful. So the sense of gathering around. The maquette, the model was built, I didn't realize it was written, I did it back in 64. I was at Notre Dame from 1960 to 1968 studying art, and so I'm sure this was designed and built at Notre Dame. And it was done, I'm sure, for Danny Pyle because he was pastor here at St. Augustine's, and I had an affinity to St. Augustine's anyway. I made the rounds for about 9 years as an associate, and I was on the board of the nominating committee for the movement of priests in the diocese. And when the Bishop Pursley, wanted to move Danny Pyle to Our Lady of the Assumption, I put up my hand and said, I would love to take St. Augustine. I hope. So that's how I came. And fortunately, Father Putz was encouraging the seminarians to come into parishes and work in their pastoral leaders. And so the first young seminarian here was Larry Dorsch. He worked for 3 years, lived at the rectory, and went to school, and then worked in the parish. Holy Cross had sisters working in the area. Anyway, so let me talk a little bit about this piece. As I said, I did the model in 64, and I really, Carol and Bill Dillon had a cherry tree in their backyard that they were taking down. And I went over and I said, please don't cut it up. Give me some 5 or 6 foot sections, and I'm gonna carve one of these days. And this really was the piece that I had in mind. And so I had it in my studio for 40 years. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. It takes me a while to get things done. So when I gave my studio away in 17, I gave a lot of steel that I had to Bill Conyers. And Bill had a place out in the country, and Bill said, why don't you come and work with me, work out at our place? And I said, that'd be great. Well, he had a lift, which was wonderful, so I could carve at different heights. And he had a compressor, because I had a tool that I had bought when I was at school, a little sledgehammer, or a pneumatic hammer that you could put a tool in and you would have to be hammering all the time. And so I used that a great deal on the piece. Started in 18, did not work during COVID for almost a year, and then this summer finished it, and then we started on the base. And the piece of wood that it's sitting on is African Jehovah wood, and so I thought it was very appropriate. And the design, of course, is African American. Gus was from Africa, and I think he's always been kind of portrayed as a European. I prefer to see him as a native of his country in Africa. So it's a thrill for me to be able to finally, after all these years, donate this to the parish here at St. A's. Because you guys have been such a gift in my life, I hope this is a gift that will go through fruit in the future. Thank you. Any questions? I think the video, I took pictures as I was working on this in the hopes that if you were interested in seeing how it kind of came about, you can look at that on the screen. But it started as really a block of wood, and then I used a chainsaw initially. And then as things got more defined, then I used tools, carving tools. And hopefully, I kept a few spots on the foot and on the back of the original surface of the log itself. It was a 13-inch, just shy of 5 feet, and I kind of like it. The problem with the difference between this piece and the wood carving is this is done originally in clay. If you make a mistake in clay, you just put more clay on it. You don't have to worry. If you make a mistake on this, you're sunk because you can't put it back. So it's going to look a little different, but it comes from that same animal. Yes.
Did you have trouble with the particular kind of way in which the wood cured or brewed? Did you have to modify your design to deal with the quirks of the pieces that you were working with?
Yeah, to some extent. You have to be careful of the grain, because if you go against the grain, it'll break. So you have to cut with the grain, and then if you're coming down, you have to cut with the grain. So you can't go against the grain coming up. So those hollows are kind of tricky because you have to be careful. But no, I think it holds the tree feel. That's why I didn't want to make it too. I wanted the tool marks to really define it as something that's carved out of wood, and not metal, or not clay, or not marble, or anything else. So that was my intent. Yes.
So in terms of the attributes, oftentimes I see Augustine primarily as a bishop, but he shows other attributes. His scroll, his writings, I suspect. How did you decide on what you would choose to?
Well, I think he obviously had written. I mean, we have his writings, and my sense is that part of the problem in a sculpture is you've got to figure out what are you going to do with arms and feet. So I like the idea of his being a preacher or a speaker, and so that was the reason for the hand. It also brings the arms in, so I didn't have that problem of adding on wood to make the arms come out. So it was more defined, I think, by my desire to stay within the parameters of the log itself.
You know, this isn't about your sculpture, though I think it's beautiful and I love that you have it. But you say that St. Augustine's has been in your heart. And what I want to say is that when I came here 40-some years ago, I'm going to start crying. What I found here in your time was living and breathing. And it gave me reason to keep coming back to church. In the time since then, I describe myself as a recovering alcoholic, a recovering Catholic. And I think we treasure you far, far more than you can even know. And it's such a tribute that you're here now with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure that had I been sent to another parish and we tried to do some of the things that we did with the kids here, we would have gotten in big trouble downtown. So I admire the ability of this community to embrace that kind of creativity and willingness. I mean, we used to start, for Palm Sunday, we started the rectory, which is way over on Thomas Street, and we had stations out. And we would process and sing through the neighborhood and arrive here. And then we would do the Palm Sunday, you know, the palms and all that. And those are kinds of things you can't do in a big parish. So it was really a gift to have this place. And I think, you know, this world in which we live in today, race is such an issue. We've got to learn to live together. And that was burnt into my life when I was here. I mean, the friends that I made. Earl Fisher used to bring his plants in the winter so we could have plants in the church. And Be Right and you know, Daryl Preston. These people were dear friends. And the trips we took, the fun things we did, it was amazing. It was amazing. Sister Diane, Sister Mary Ann, you know, we had Larry Dorsch and then Dave Polich, and then Jerry Logan, and then Paul Tracy, and we had, I'm going to forget, Herman Semeju was a fellow from Africa who was with us for a while. So it was really an amazing time. Thank you. Yes, Lloyd.
We were attracted here because we had the adopted children. We chose this place to bring them before they left us because we wanted them to know that black people could do leadership. And so we chose to sit quietly in the church and let our children see all these people you mentioned doing their thing. So that was so important to us, for our children.
And of course the music here was wonderful. Clarence Rivers had just kind of published his work, and with Willa Lawrence and Bob Huddleston and Mallard, Debbie Mallard. I mean, it was just that the whole, what was going on in the community was just terrific. And you people from ARC too were wonderful. Your kids came here and could confide in all of this.
I want to tell you something about one of our white friends. Leo was his name. He was a little bit different from most people. Is still. He asked me when I grow up, will I get to be black? His older brothers were all black. And then another thing about him, we were kind of in a rush to get out of town after Mass one time. And so we said to him, I said, we're going to have to go to a different church because, you know, this church isn't speedy. So he says, oh, I hate that because the Mass is so long in this speedy church. So 2.5 hours is fine, but, you know, 34.5 minutes.
In another place doesn't work.
I can remember singing with the choir, and we would go to these big sing-outs with other choirs. And it was Christmas time, and I said, Huddleston, what are we going to sing? We get all those people out there. And he said, well, songs we're used to, and the good Lord will provide what we're going to sing. So we sang, and we took the place down, and because of the spirit with which you sing, the spirit's with it. And a lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, that's so wonderful. You must have planned that program for a long time. I said, you will never know how long we planned it.
Mine's a practical question. Are there any things we need to do special to keep it looking this way?
I think it'll stay. I mentioned to some of you that I found a polyurethane, which is a real good sealer, called flat, which means that it doesn't look as though it's been sealed. It actually has 2 coats of polyurethane, so it should not be a problem. Just dust it every now and then, and it should be fine.
I would be concerned about the temperature. One of the things we noticed in my shop, because I'm cheap, but I won't keep the heat on all the time. It cracked, we developed some cracks in it because of the temperature differentials. I would make sure that it stayed in a nice, warm place.
Yeah, Mel?
Gail Mandel has a question.
Yes, Dale? Gail?
Well, she had one, now she doesn't.
No, well, somebody before asked something along the same line. I was wondering if you could describe what's going on inside your statue. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, oh my God, he's preaching to God, or holding him accountable. And then I was thinking, maybe he's thinking, oh God, make me better, but not yet. Yeah, all these things were coming to mind, and I wonder if you had thought about that. What-
No, I'm delighted that those are some of the things that are coming out of this. I think there's a sort of, in our age, we're becoming much more conscious of the cosmos. We're not the middle of everything. You know, we're a little tiny speck in this absolutely immense, absolutely fabulous cosmos and world that we live in. So I think that sense of looking up at the stars and the kind of connection with that. And, you know, as people reminded, heaven isn't up anymore. Heaven, because for the people in Australia, so I think that kind of sense of not, you know, being pointed at you, but sort of looking up, that was probably more in my head.
Thank you. And I finally decided, to me, it's an expression of wonder. And what you say about the universe.
Yeah.
Wow.
He has his mouth open, so he's obviously they're talking.
Well, I have to tell you, when I first saw it, because the day I came to 8:15 to talk about the synods, I can't pronounce the word, folks, process that's going on in the church, and we just really kind of started this weekend. And I looked at it and I said, he's saying, listen. You know, it's like telling us to listen what the people are going to be saying.
It's a sense of wonder, I think. I like that awe kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did a sculpture of Isaiah 6, where the six-winged seraph touches the tongue of the prophet, and I gave it to Elliot Rosenstock, who was the rabbi at Temple Bethel, and when he said, that reminds me of awe. And I thought, wow, that mystery of coming from within.
I tell you, when I see him, he scared me so many times as I walked into my shop. A totally different vision.
Bill was absolutely wonderful to work with. I gave him some steel from my studio. He said, come out and work at my place. And it was a treat. I mean, could have been more hospitable. Great place. I had a kind of a spot by my own, and I had all kinds of tools and equipment that made it possible. I mean, I could not have done this, I think, in my own shop because I didn't have the ability to lift it up, bring it down, and work on it. So I have great kudos to Bill.
But Hank, could you just introduce us to Bill with a short comment?
Bill Conyers and his wife.
My wife did that. It's a pleasure to work with Hank and take a little touch of this parish. I just love your spirit.
Towards the end, you'll see Bill working on a machine that cut the name and the crosses in the vase, and it's a very interesting machine, and I was so grateful that he let me watch him do it. towards the end of the video. Yes.
Mel, you know how we go around after church, before church and say what people's names are? This is a small enough group. Do you think we could do that? Because there are a lot of people here who know you, and we don't know you, and you don't know us. And a name would be a wonderful way to introduce ourselves.
And that's our tradition.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Starting with you, going that way.
All right, I'm Deacon Mel. I am the second African-American deacon in the history of this parish, and I'm currently the only African-American clergy ordained to this parish. So I'm really mindful of the history here, and I'm really mindful of Hank and her father, Tillman, and some others' names, and it's just really great to see folks and place the names and faces with the history. You don't all have to talk that long. That's really short for me anyway, so I go this way.
I'll take it out.
Your name and
Just take it out.
Hank, for I don't know how many years now, certainly have a lot of things in common and really enjoy the work.
Thank you, John.
I'm Carolyn Kelly, half of the team, and as a woodworker, I have great admiration for Hank's work, and again, we've been friends for a long, long time.
Carolyn gets me into Father Yosta's studio over at Notre Dame. She has the key, I do not. So if I have to do woodwork, she helped me with the base. Carolyn is the one who gets me in. Thank you, Carolyn.
I am Ed Kelly. I am Tom and Carolyn's son. Longtime friends of Hank and Nancy.
I'm John Halk, and I'm fascinated. Thank you.
I'm Joan Halk, and we belong to St. Augustine's.
I'm Lloyd Ketchum, and we're pretty much here because of Hank. We started out in Fort Wayne, and we decided we wanted more children than we were able to do by ourselves. So we started adopting, and we adopted our first child there, and then brought here, and we adopted two since then, and two of them were black children. So we had been to Father Hank's parish in Fort Wayne, and we went away for 2 years, came back, and went to that same parish, and it wasn't the same anymore. And fortunately, after we got here, we discovered Hank was over here, so we moved our children over here, and it was the best place in the world.
Peg Wickie and Steve. We had a baby in January 1976, same time as you guys, Leo, and we thought, we haven't been in church. We need to be back in church. And the nurse midwife said, oh, you need to come to St. Augustine. And that was Barb Hammond, who became a dear friend. And we came then, and we've been here since. And I would say it's kind of the only place for us. So. And Hank made that so that.
And I would say, echo both the role of Hank and the role of the parish. There was such a great community here, with so many people engaged in social action projects and trying to bring people together. And we felt that that was the community that we wanted to raise our children in, that are eternally grateful for that. And I would say, I'm in awe.
Thank you. I'm Linda Conyers, and I have to tell you, Hank, one of the best things is not only seeing you at our home so often, but Nancy often bringing banana chocolate chip bread and all sorts of good things. And we had known Nancy many years ago at Little Flower Parish when it was as wild, I think, as St. Augustine. Am I correct? Spirited. Oh, spirited, yes.
Of course, that's Philip.
For sure.
I'm Tina Jones, and I've been here for 27 years.
I'm Sarah Randall. I've been here 12 years. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Nigeria, and so I'm the only person in my family here, and of course my family's 8,000 miles away. So
mascot.
Barbara Young, I'm a new friend of Hank. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Stanley, and this is my husband, Ted. We're part of a group that are honored to call Hank and Nancy friends.
I'm a pastor at a Lutheran church, so you got a broad base here today.
Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Oh, I'm James Summers, and I have the blessing of being Deacon Mill's mentee as I go through the permanent diaconate.
Oh, good.
I'm Rita Taylor, and I am longtime friends of Nancy and Hank's. I met Hank through Nancy, who was a great mentor for me through my undergraduate years at St. Mary's College, and then had the privilege of coming to know Hank. Fellow artists, you all right now have the view of the front, and I've had this gorgeous view of the back of the sculpture, which is one of the wonderful things about pieces of works in 3D. And one of the things that I just want to say to Hank is, although I've seen this piece several times, I'm only now noticing how beautiful this side is, and your hand in it, and the way that his garb is very feminine, and how the material moves, and how much I appreciate that part of it, theologically as well as just artistically. So I encourage everybody to come and see the back of it.
That's why we put it out, so everybody could walk around, because I do think the back has got nothing to say as well.
Mike Litowski, I'm fairly new here, a couple of years, and just it's a beautiful sculpture. Thank you.
I'm Nora Geisler, and I've been coming here for 40 plus years off and on, depending on who the pastor was. But I always come back, and because it feels like home. Amen.
Amen. I'm Nancy Mascott, and let's see, I was working at Aquinas Bookshop that was just below Fides Publishers. And Father Putz was living with Hank at the time. And he invited me to come to a gathering of women, half divorced and half widowed at the time. And that's when I met Hank. And we were friends for 20 years, part of which time I began to change my affiliation from Little Flower to St. A's, and I raised my children here, who are now 55 and 54.
What are you telling this?
And I'd like to remember a few people, Francis and Cinda Hubbard, and Paul and Bobby Gardner, and maybe some of you who were here back in those days would bring their names to this community today, people that are no longer with us, who meant so much at the time. Our dear friend Ruth Pettigrew, who raised 7 children and was our unofficial chaperone for 20 years. The 3 of us were like the 3 musketeers for 20 years before we married. So that's a little bit of our story. Thank you.
Francis Hubbard is the one who started the soup kitchen at St. Anne's.
Right.
Pat?
So I'm Pat Hackett, and a friend of Hank and Nancy's, and I'm your work at looking at the statue and what you were describing, the carving. In my studies in theology, I've never liked how Augustine's been interpreted theologically and how he's been used in terms of supporting an understanding of institutional church and put it over and against the world. When I see your work, it's not only awe, but he's saying, no, it's love. I love this piece, and in this church, and the kind of renewal that the institutional Catholic Church needs, this is what it's about. So thank you, Hank. It's beautiful.
I'm Laura. I'm also a fellow artist, and there is a distinct link between art and spirituality. And it's kind of one of those mysteries. I consider myself sort of a flower child because I was born in 62, and that happens to be the year of the Vatican II Council. So grew up at a little flower church with all that great music and so forth. And then I was a lucky recipient to be a preteen and a teenager coming here. And that definitely formed my concept of the kingdom of God and justice and inclusiveness, those sorts of things. And I did a drawing for Father Ron at Christ the King had passed away. And every time I went into my space where I do that work, it was like spending time with him. And kind of a conversation. And it was a pencil drawing portrait. And, you know, it's spiritual. I felt connected. I felt like he was present with me. We communicated. I know there's another artist here that I think feels that communication with the person that she's portraying in her work.
I have to be Laura's father, big file, and Mascot always has, to me, always has a smile and a love of Jesus comes through his eyes and his way of working with people. He's not a confused person. He's organized, but at the same time, I always find him loving and caring. And so we go way back, and fortunately, we recently had serendipity. Serendipity is when unexpected things come into your life. I had a friend who said, life is what happens while you make other plans. Amen. And so Hank had some other things he wanted to talk to me about recently, and he introduced what he's doing here, and that came back to me today. The biggest thing as far as this parish is concerned is the times when I sang with your choir. And that music and the beautiful music that you have here that is so different than any other music around you. So it's a coming back and a time when my kids were with me in this parish and a joy for Laura and I to have a father-son time together too. So thank you.
So I'm Cheryl Ash, and what he doesn't know is the first time I attended a mass was when one of my childhood friends' child was being baptized here. And he did the baptism, and I felt so at home that I came back week after week after week, and he was gone, but I ended up in my adulthood becoming Catholic. And it was the influence of hearing his homilies. They just were so good.
I'm Julie Chismar, and I know Nancy and Hank because of a group that we are in. And it's been a privilege to know both of them and to enjoy their gentleness and their faith that they're willing to share with all of us. Thank you.
I'm Sister Betty Schmoyer, and I guess I'm here because of Lady Johnson, because I was campus minister at St. Mary's and in charge of music, and she would come a couple times a year and sing, lead one of the mass music and give a reflection. And she was from this parish, and I thought if I ever finish this job at St. Mary's, this is where I want to come. So I did that, and I finished, retired in '09, and I've been here ever since. And I'm extremely grateful and humbled to be here.
I'm Roland Barrett, and good friends of Hank and Nancy for a long time. I don't know where we met or when it all began, but it's been a long time. So we're really, my husband Roger, we're really happy to be here. I feel like I'm an adopted daughter because of Mac and Mary McDougall. They were parishioners here for such a long time. Mac would say to this sculpture, "He's calling me back here." And I wish he was. Anyway, another one that I want to remember is Nora Batiste. She was a great person here, and there's so many more. But Mac was the one that really wanted me to be here with him, and he would drag me from time to time. But I'd say, Mac, I've been at my parish for so long, I can't leave them. And he says, yes, you can.
Janet Johnson, a friend of Hank and Nancy's.
Somebody stand up and tell us.
My name is Annie Tardy. I'm a parishioner here at St. A's, and I'm the deacon's wife. I'm also the convener of a group called the Total Ambassadors of Christiana. And it is all about praying for Father Justice Total to be canonized and become the first black saint. So we ask that you guys pray for us as we pray for Father Justice Total. Thank you.
I'm Wendy Summers, and I am a parishioner of St. Pius, although I've been coming to St. A's for about 23 years now, quite often. And I too am a Tolton ambassador and happy to be here and do this beautiful work.
Okay, is this all right?
Well, I'm Gail Randall. My husband Dan and I are here because of a broken drain pipe in the kitchen. We were invited for dinner to Rita Cassidy. She was the head of African Studies at St. Mary's. And the drain pipe backed up, and Dan fixed it. She said, I'm going to do a favor for you. I'm going to tell you about St. Augustine's. I don't tell many people because I don't like people to take them over. We came in 1973. Hank was on the altar. The choir was overwhelming. We've been here ever since.
Drain pipes. Yes, I'm here out of friendship, celebration, and because of this warm hospitality.
I'm Laura Eagwood, and this is my husband, Chris Vandenbosch. And I've known Nancy for a long time because we met when we were both employed at St. Mary's. I've come to know them more intimately now that we are in a faith sharing group together. But we are so excited to be now learning about Hank's art. We are not members of St. Augustine's, but most of our favorite people are. So I'm very happy to be here and see you all. And it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'm Beth Dorasha, and Tony and I first met Hank and Nancy at T-Play many, many years ago, and now we're also part of the same faith sharing community as Chris and Laura and Julie are. And Hank, it's just gorgeous. I can't wait to see the back.
Thank you. I'm John Litowski. I work at Bill Packer's shop. And my only involvement with this statue was moving the steel when they were cutting the base and moving the statue around just to mess with Bill.
Hi, my name is Claire Coleman. I grew up in St. Augustine's. I brought my mom, Carol Dillon.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. I'm Jennifer Dillon, and I also grew up in this parish. And the wood that this artist came from the tree in our backyard.
No.
So to be the doubly proud thing.
There's a plaque for Bill on the wall there too.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm Wanda Mangus. I'm sorry, I'm not a member of St. Augustine's. I'm a member member of the Plymouth Church of the Brethren, but I have known Hank for many years. He was a part of our prison visitation group many, many years ago. And I'm also friends with a number of other people here at St. Augustine's. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm Father Len Collins. I am the pastor here. Have been for 14 years. In 1968, I was studying theology in Washington, D.C. at Holy Cross College. We closed the college down and came back to Moreau Seminary. And as a deacon, I was Dan Kyle's deacon for that year. After that, I went south and ended up in Mexico for 11 years, and then 14 years ago, they brought me back up here, and I've been pastor here ever since. One quick thing, a few weeks ago, there was a very nice mass at the Basilica at Notre Dame with Cardinal Gregory as the celebrant, and they had some gospel music during it, and it was very nice. And when I was leaving, I was walking back to my car, and two very lovely white ladies were walking beside me, and I presume they just went to church at the Basilica. And they said to me, well, Father, have you ever seen anything like that before? And I said, yes, ma'am, every Sunday. Only our music is better.
Lem, why don't you introduce yourself, Lem?
Oh, is that Lem?
Yes, that's Lem Joyner. And can you introduce yourself, Lem?
Lem,
Nancy Nascott.
Oh, there's Barb.
Barb and Lem lived with me at the rectory over on Thomas Street.
I am Lem, this is Barb. We've been coming, I think about 1960 something.
Yep.
Yes, and it's good to come back to know, every once in a while to find out and see the people that I know you.
I grew up with your children, so I was over your house a lot.
Yeah. But it's good to be back. Oh, that's Hank. Yeah, so we're here. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm his wife, Barbara, and I used to come here a long time ago. We now go to Sister Emmanuel's on Adams Road.
If we could do this table here. Did you guys get in?
I will. I'm Thomas Jenkins. I've been here for 30 years.
Short time.
Yeah, short time. One of the new kids. I got transferred. I worked for the phone company that was headquartered in Warsaw, and we moved from Lima, Ohio, where my wife was born and raised. And choice was living here or living in Fort Wayne, which was because I said I was not raising my kids in towns that didn't have any black people. And I said, but my family's Catholic, and I want to find a Catholic parish that's like what my dad grew up with. My family's from southwest Louisiana, out on Bayou Teche. And so I went to a church in Fort Wayne, I went to a number of churches in South Bend, and this was the only one that came close. The music-wise, the music is very similar. But the other piece about St. A's that is totally different than any place I've been on in the country, and we've been actually in other countries as well, is the love of the parish. Coffee Inn is the most loving, unofficial Catholic ceremony in the world. And no place else does it like they do it here. You will become family if you come to St. A's for 3 weeks, I guarantee you. If you come to Mass and sit with us after Mass. That's when the real indoctrination is.
Hello, my name is Jenkins. I've been here for like 8 years. I'm a young kid. I wish I was born back in our day because that statue is wonderful. I'm in love with it. I want my personal one. Yeah, I sing in the choir. I've been here on and off. I actually fell in love with this parish because of Cheryl Ash. She was the first person who brought me here when I had moved down here from Arkansas when my other people had passed away, and fell in love with this place ever since. And I love this church because this is like family to me.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
So I'm Michael Driscoll. I'm a priest for the Helena Diocese of Montana. But 27 years ago, I was lured out to South Bend to teach at Notre Dame. And I've known Hank and Nancy for about a quarter of a century. But I met them at Our Lady of Loretto at St. Mary's College. And we frequent that place. And I'm really happy to see the statue. I'm glad it took only 40 years to come to gestation. But you can see it's a great product of love on your part. And we know that Augustine was the preacher of love, and I think that your statue really encapsulates that.
I'm David Coconut, and you can tell an Irishman and Hoosier and such, but when you tell a Finlander, you can't tell him much. I'm in the choir, and I'm borrowing a robe, so I get to clean up afterwards.
I'm Shelley Ketchum. My husband over here heard me a little while ago. We had many great years here at St. Augustine's when our kids were little. Some of our children were birth children, and some of our children were black. And they were always welcome, and we just had a wonderful time here. And sitting here with you people today, I really miss it a lot. Thanks for being here.
My name is Marcia Marker, and I met Hank and Nancy with P-Flag when my daughter said, "Mom, call Hank and Nancy." And from then on, it's been wonderful. And I also followed you guys to Loretto. And I have found a good family there, but I also am very tempted to attend here. You're very loving, caring. I would like that, thank you. And Hank, your art is beautiful. I'm just drawn to the eyes, the vision. You're welcome.
I'm Anita Brown, and I met Hank and Nancy Our Lady of Loretto during the war and welcoming. And I am just really working in awe. I did not know what to expect. I had never been to an event like this, where the sculpture and the person who did the sculpting were there, and thank you.
My name is Arthena Wilson. I used to go to St. Hedwig's, and then they closed, and I had to go to St. Patrick's. But I got caught in the middle of being baptized and making my first communion. So my mom had me come here, and I was 10. Father Pyle baptized me and did my first communion. And then they said, well, Father Pyle, he was, so I was so used to him. And they said, well, Father Pyle's going to leave and Father Mascot's coming. And I was like, who? Oh, God. Now I'm thinking as a kid, how do you switch up people? I didn't know they could do that. So when Father Mascot came, and I was thinking, I'm not going like him. And it was like, the first time I met him, he grabbed my hand and was like, hi, I'm Hannah. And I was like, God, I thank him already. So it's been like that ever since. He was just like, I'm going to do art, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. He was so alive till you didn't have a choice but to like him. So, and I still like him.
Hi, I'm Joanne Kelly. I go with Ed Kelly. I have known Nancy for 60-plus years, which tells you we're quite old.
Speak for yourself.
We became friends as freshmen at St. Mary's, and through Nancy, I later met Hank, and we're just really we feel so gifted that they're our friends. And I will say, I shouldn't say this, but Hank is also a wonderful handyman, because when anything goes wrong in my house, I call Hank to find out if he could fix it, or if he couldn't, he suggests someone else.
Leo back there.
My name is Leo Kramer, and I've known Hank for 30-some years when he was pastor at St. Jude's, and my wife will introduce herself. That was my connection. Used to be here in Nancy.
I'm Sharon Kramer, and I met Hank when I was music director at St. Jude Parish when we first moved to South Bend.
Well, I think I can speak on behalf of all the members of St. A's. Y'all have a church home if you need one. And if you don't need a church home, you need a prayer, we'll just send it to us, because we'll put you on our prayer list, whatever your prayer needs are. But thank you all for coming.
There's one other person back there.
Hi, my name is Sean Garvey. I'm partners with Jenny Dillon. She mentioned to me about Brother Hank and his sculpture. I was a fine arts major. Instantly, sculpture is very, very interesting, and it's a beautiful piece. And I'm just here as a guest, and thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, if you get a chance to pick up one of these sheets, you're welcome to take them home. We have some books over here that I've also I'm giving to the parish because they, I think, will be appreciated by all of you. It's a treat to be able to have you all here today and give you a gift. And for those of you who are just coming in, please come up and walk around and see the piece. And then Jim Whitehead just walked in, and Jim is a dear friend, and wanted to say, Jim, it's a delight that you made it, and look forward to having you take a good look.
Thank you all.